Hi, I'm Kevin Eikenberry, and I'm here to help you reach your potential as a leader and a human being. Welcome to Remarkable TV and the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. If you happen to be watching on YouTube, please make sure you click the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. Today, on this episode, I'm encouraging you to listen without ego. Are you ready? Let's get started. Recently on the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, an author named David Bodanis said this: if you're a bully, no one tells you the truth. If you listen without ego, you hear what's going on. First of all, I would encourage you to go back and listen to that episode with David. But when he said that, when he said listening without ego, it struck a chord with me. I've thought about it a lot. I know that I don't always do it very well in every situation, but I wanted to talk about it here with you right now. So when we think about listening without ego, let's start with, how does ego get in the way of our listening, right? Well, first, it can get in our way because we're wanting to make our point, right? So we're listening, but we're really waiting for our chance to pounce back in. And we might even be interrupting when we're doing that. So we're interrupting because we got to make our point. We want to make it clear. We need to set them straight because we're framing everything through our perspective. We heard something, or we think we heard something, and now we need to get our point across. We're seeing it through our lens. So we may actually stop listening because we're so wrapped up in our stuff. That's listening with ego, right? Because ultimately, we're making it about us, which isn't really listening at all. But if we stop and think and say, well, what does it look like or feel like when we listen without ego? First of all, we're patient, right? We slow down. We're really listening because we want to hear what they have to say. That's the way we ought to be listening, right? We stay out of judgment longer because we're focused on what they're saying and making sure we understand it, not going immediately into, here's what I think, here's what you should know, here's my point. And when we listen without ego, we're more able to stay present with that person in that moment. Because the minute we start getting ourselves in it, we're no longer in the present. We're all about getting our point across. Listening's not really happening. When we listen without ego, ultimately, it's not about us. It's about the other person. Now, I know that I have done both. You could find snapshots or videos of me where I was doing either one of those really, really well. The question for all of us is, how can we spend more of our time listening without ego? Let me close with today's tweet. When we take our ego out, listen without ego, as David Bodanis says, we will get far better results in our communication and our relationships. Well, I just mentioned the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. You may be listening to it. I mentioned it because I was talking about the great episode I did with David Bodanis. But there are hundreds of those episodes, and you should go back. You really ought to go back. You're really going to want to go back and listen to some of those conversations. Add the Remarkable Leadership Podcast to your podcast listening list. We hope that you'll do that. And then you'll get these episodes too, because next week we'll be back with another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast and Remarkable TV. We'll see you then.